Start a small business. No need to work 40, 50 hours a week, slaving your life away. Obtain financial freedom. Be your own boss and create your own destiny. Moguls are the new superstars. The path to country club membership and a leased Mercedes-Benz is paved in gold as you take your business trips to Orlando or Vegas. Validation from your in-laws is just an LLC and Facebook business page away. At least, that's what they tell you anyways. Through social media, websites, and targeted ads, you're sold an image. Small business owners seem to walk on water. You'd think you're the last person on earth working a regular job with a regular boss. But there's trouble in paradise, and its name is in over your head. People start looking to start their own business, don't know what they don't know. But that's why we started our Small Business Confidential podcast, to share what we've learned from years of experience. There's not a lot of people in on this, so remember, dear podcast listeners, you heard it here first, off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Riley. It's springtime here in Cleveland, late April. The buds are just starting to come out. It's beautiful sunny day, although on the little bit on the chilly side, upper 40s. And with me is controller of Riley Painting Company, Brook Riley, my middle son, and his assistant, who also does work on the podcast, Amari, Aka Brandon Clancy, otherwise known as Amari. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Nice sunny day. It's a little cold, but we're almost to Friday.
You holding up, Amari?
I'm holding up. I got a fresh cup of black coffee here, a little late in the day. My second wind. So I'm doing pretty good.
All right. Well, Brooke, lead off what we're going to be talking about with our audience, and then we'll begin our free flow conversation.
Yeah, so I think the big topic we want to talk about is the importance of process, what that means in running a small business. And that topic is pretty fresh in my mind the past couple of weeks as we've started to open up the hood, look at our processes, our lack of processes for certain aspects within our company. And I wouldn't say a big part of my week, but an important part of my week has been specifically looking at our process for the properties and all the work that we do there. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So I've really been taking a look at what everyone is doing, what everyone is responsible for, and organizing the flow chart, who's doing what, who's backstopping who, how frequent are we doing it. And, I'm a very, I think, analytical person. I like processes. I like numbers. I like spreadsheets. So for me, this was a satisfying task to do. And I think one of the big things I've taken away from this whole, no pun intended, process has been, yes, it's important to get down to the small details. I think that is very important because I think that's where things can fall through the cracks. But you also need to look at it from a treetop view and really kind of assign an overview of what each person is responsible for. And I know, Mike, you and I talked about that on Tuesday. We talked about it with Lindsay yesterday. So yeah, that's kind of where my head's at on it. And I'm glad we at least finished version 1.0, which leads me to my second point of the importance of the process. And I know, Amari, you would agree with this, is this whole process is going to be evolving. I mean, just because we've created a spreadsheet. We've told people what they're doing. We're going to find, and we need to prepare that throughout the week, the month, the year, we're going to find ways to improve this process and make it more efficient. So that's kind of where my head's at this past week.
Well, this will be an interesting conversation because, I started this business 50 years ago, the Riley Painting and Contracting business. The property business, which is called RP, Riley Properties, and then RPC, which is Riley Painting and Contracting. RP started roughly about 20 years ago when we bought our first rental property. And, it's so easy to get lost in all the MBA terms, important to get a process, important to do this, important to have a strategic plan. I know that I have evolved being the old dog because 50 years ago, I was doing everything. I was doing paying the guys, getting the jobs finished, collecting the money. So there wasn't really a process in place. It was a series of routines that you were doing. I mean, you had to get the jobs to keep the guys busy. Oh yeah, I got to put a hiring ad in because this guy just quit on me. And the weather's changed, so now I've got to get some rain work or some cold weather work. And we got to get this job finished because they got to meet payroll. And so there is, in the early days, there's a lot of near-death experiences. And we talked about this in an earlier podcast about, there's nothing like meeting payroll as a near-death experience to really focus your mind on what you have to do, what is the priority. Now, if you're coming at it from a business school, I just got my MBA, everything is theoretical. Everything is, I'm not saying it's abstract, but there's a lot of cliches floating around. But very seldom does the rubber meet the road. So from my point of view, at being the old dog here, there's a lot of fly by the seat of your pants that is ingrained after 50 years. When you bring in new young people and you build a succession plan and you build an organization that you can step away from, that's when process really steps in. Because when a call comes in for an estimate, there's got to be steps that are followed. When a call comes in for a rental property, there has to be steps that have to be followed. And, I think the king of process is probably Amazon. You go on Amazon and you buy something, it triggers a gazillion processes, between, collecting your money, updating the distribution center, getting it delivered, updating the delivery time, the whole 9 yards. But for you people out there that are listening, for buying a property, one thing that has become apparent to us when we work with investors is the process that they have is non-existent. They're buying a house before they've even lined up a property manager. Or they're buying a house through a realtor and they're not really having it inspected. Or they're buying a house in a neighborhood and they haven't inspected the neighborhood to see if it's viable. So one thing is clear, that you need a process in place for anything you do, especially if it's repetitive. Amari, what's your general take on all this?
Yeah, so my general take is, one of the things that I run into a lot in the day to day is, and I just got a call earlier from one of the foremen asking me about the dumpster process, and I didn't really know how to answer it. I'm just kind of coming up with what I think at the time. But, it always, those moments really beg the question of where's the process for this? Who's the go-to person? What do you do if X happens? And one of the more like valuable things for me in the day to day in terms of process is not having to reinvent the wheel every time somebody asks you about anything. Or, like even in a bigger scenario of like what happens when an employee quits, what happens when an employee is sick, do you have to reinvent the wheel for their whole job, for their whole process and find out, oh, they're responsible for things I didn't even know about? Or is there already processes in place to where everybody kind of knows, okay, I can refer to this. Here's what you do if X, here's what you do if Y, and I think there's bigger examples like that. And then smaller examples throughout the day of just questions of like, oh yeah, there should be a process for the dumpster. There should be a process for making sure the warehouse is clean. There should be things in place. So, you're not just flying by the seat of your pants in situations you don't even have to. Of course, there's things out of your control that happen, catastrophic events, near death scenarios like you were mentioning, Mike. But there's much smaller situations that happen throughout the day that a process helps just alleviate some of the stress that just builds up. Little things every day. Oh, I have to reinvent the wheel on this, reinvent the wheel on that, and then my whole day is gone, and the priorities get lost in the mix of that.
Well, I think to your point, Amari, one of the things that we've been working on these last couple of weeks, which has been very helpful in terms of clarifying what the processes that need to be in place are, is when you have your clipboard for the day. What we developed at our company is we have a Friday schedule board meeting with all the foremen. We have 4 women in the Philippines who are our virtual assistants. 2 of them are on the phone call, on the Zoom call. We've got 3 main foremen. We've got our controller remote, who's in Cuyahoga Falls. That's Beth. Then we got Brook, and we got Amari. So we have basically 8 to 9 people on this call, and we are setting the schedule for the upcoming week. So on the RPC side, the foreman got XYZ jobs to get finished and collected. Okay. On the RP side, we've got these houses that are vacant and we need to book them. And then these houses also require ABC in terms of repairs. So everybody has their checklist of what they're supposed to accomplish next week. Now, here's the kicker. What happens if week after week after week, they're lucky if they get 1 or 2 things done? Well, that shows you that they're getting pulled in 6 different directions, which can be very common. You people out there who have their own businesses know this firsthand. You are doing everything, and you're trying to go out and sell a job, and then all of a sudden you get a call from, somebody who didn't show up for work, right? Or you get a complaint, or just maybe somebody fell off the ladder, or all of a sudden you thought it was going to be a sunny day and now it's raining. You were always reacting, and at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, what did I get done today? And how often did I get pulled away? That is when you need to be thinking and building awareness about what processes need to be in place. And a lot of times those processes are hiring somebody that you can delegate to, who's got a list of things they've got to get done. And that's hard to do for somebody who is used to doing everything themselves. Most of the time, people that start out their own business, they always find it easier to do the work themselves. It's easier for me to do it than to delegate it. I know it's going to get done right, but then look at what you're pulling yourself away from. Go ahead, Brooke, you jump in.
Yeah, no, it's I was listening or watching an interview that Obama did with, I think it was Business Insider or some news outlet. And the reporter was asking him any advice for people out of college or young people when they get their first job. And Obama said, get really good at just getting stuff done. At the end of the day, that is so important. And, that's
Get it
another.
off, get it off your desk. Get it off your desk, right?
Yeah. And I think simplifying your to-do list and prioritizing things is super important as well, because if you have a lot of clutter and there's a lot of repetitive tasks on there, that can really clog up your brain. And I think if you have a clean, easy to read list or a spreadsheet or a notepad of, hey, these are the tasks that I need to get done this week, they're in order of urgency. And I mean, once you start getting these small things done, it's a very satisfying feeling. And then it makes it even more satisfying when you get some of the bigger things done. So,
Right. Let me add to that, which is you have to prioritize what gets done and what what is going to have to wait. And that is when you have to confront situations. Like one of the things that we have screening process in, people call for an estimate, and we're looking at what is the source of this estimate. Is it a repeat customer? Is it somebody who just found us, online, or used to be in the phone book? Or maybe they met one of our guys at Home Depot or the paint store or whatever. They saw our trucks driving around. They're calling us. The question is, are they serious? Are they serious buyers? Or, well, I was thinking about doing this year. You have to filter out who you're doing an estimate to, because, these estimates are free. In some cases, we actually charge for an estimate because what they're calling for is not an estimate on something where, hey, I need this done. They need to say, find a leak, or this is broken. I don't know what to do here. I'm thinking of doing something to the kitchen or the bathroom. That's a design work. Or on the property rental side, people are calling. Are they just calling around? They're calling 20 different, people. Who do you want to rent your house to? A lot of times we'll ask them, well, you got to go into our online site, fill out a form, send it in. They don't do it. Okay, well, they're not serious. So it's one thing to get things done, but you got to get the priority things done. And the number one thing you have to get done at the end of every day is to put together a list, an absolute 1 to 10 list, with number one being the most important thing. What are you going to get done tomorrow? This is it. And what that list that you're doing has to be connected to your strategic plan for the year, or at least for the month or for the quarter. Your thoughts, Amari?
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back. If you enjoy listening to our Small Business Confidential podcast, we're sure you'll enjoy our first podcast, The Cleveland Real Estate Investor. We give outside investors an inside look into the real estate market in Cleveland. Cleveland has been on the rise, and investors from all over see those cheap prices and salivate. Our job is to educate those investors and steer them in the right direction with several years of experience of how to do it right and many examples of how to do it wrong. Find the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast on any app you listen to your podcast today.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, obviously we had that meeting last week where we just did an overhaul of the schedule board, which I've just gotten more used to using this weekend. It's kind of like every day, the way that it's set up now to have all the priorities, just clean, not 20 things, 30 things. It's just, less than 10 things. It's just the utmost priority things, which are all connected to the larger strategy of the company. That helps me go through my day and look at how does my day match up to the priorities that I set for this week. Is it just a bunch of stuff that just got thrown on my plate that is disconnected from what I was supposed to be doing this week, which is disconnected from, the larger strategy? It helps kind of just frame your mind to view things more in that way of, okay, my day is set in a sense of like, okay, I'm touching all the key things I need to touch, whether that's podcast, marketing, hiring, truck sale, XYZ. It's like, okay, this matches up with the week. So then
Right.
you're not just getting a bunch of random things done, but you're getting the things that you need to be getting done.
Yeah, let's take, for example, a football analogy. The quarterback calls a play. It's a pass play. The receivers are supposed to run specific routes. The offensive line is supposed to block a certain way. And a lot of times, back in the day of Bill Walsh, San Francisco 49ers, for those football aficionados out there, he would call plays, and it could be a 3-step drop, a 5-step drop, an 8-step drop. But that quarterback's supposed to run that play the right way. The receivers are supposed to write very precise patterns, and the offensive line is supposed to block. Now, I think we may have talked about this in an earlier podcast, but what everybody in your company is doing should be connected to what everybody else is doing. And I think what hopefully what everybody who's listening to this, who maybe be starting out doing a business, this is a lot harder. This is a lot harder than it looks. I mean, for people starting their own business, oh yeah, well, I just love to cook, so I'm going to open up a restaurant. Or my passion is doing this, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to be happy, and my life is going to be happy. It doesn't work that way, everybody. I'm going to buy one house, and then I'm going to get another house, and pretty soon, in a couple of years, I'll just have houses. I'll just have a portfolio of real estate. Really? Do you think that's how it works? No, it doesn't work that way. That's a great way to lose your shirt. You've got to have a strategic plan, and you have to have a weekly plan, a daily plan that's connected to that strategic plan. And that is what having processes in place is all about. It's the nuts and bolts. Brook, to you?
Yeah, no, it's the fundamentals. I was watching a golfer it was a YouTube video, and he was a pro golfer, and he was walking the course, and he was explaining his shots with a kind of like young amateur, and the young amateur was having a really tough time. You could tell he was pretty nervous, and the pro kept stressing to him having a process. You build your process on the range. You repeat it every shot. So whether you're playing great, whether you're playing poorly, you always are refining the process. And I like that, A, because I like to golf, but B, because I think that is so important, is when things are going well, when things aren't going well, if something comes out of left field, you need to rely on your process. You need to look at it and just stick to the basics. And if something is not working, or it's adding more stress, or it's taking longer to do, or if there's constant mistakes, then you need to look at that process and say, okay, how can I make this easier? How can I make this more effective? So, yeah.
Let me piggyback on that. Here's another golden rule. You have got to learn from your mistakes. If you're a person who going into it thinks you're going to be a millionaire if you buy one house, life is going, unless you got some trust fund, and making money is irrelevant to you pretending you're a real estate mogul. The reality is you're going to flop. You're going to know right away if you got a great plan in place, and you are asking yourself, is this working every day? Is this working? Now you got to stay with it. There's a certain quality of persistence, but you always have to learn from your mistakes. And what I was saying, an earlier podcast, is your success is based on a mountain of mistakes. And if your ego or your nature is that you do not like to admit mistakes. You like to blame other people, or you've got some family that's standing behind you that's going to constantly bail you out if you screw up, you're never going to evolve. And a process like Brook, what you were saying earlier, we're in, 2024, we're making some fundamental challenges, people. Fundamental changes in what we're doing this year, because we're actually re-looking at the Airbnb model, because everybody and their dog's doing Airbnb. We're re-looking at our contracting side because it's hard to hire people now. It's not like it was 20 years ago. So that ability to adapt is at the core of effective processes, because they're always getting tweaked. Always. You may have a process in place for your foreman to follow, but what happens if they don't want to do that? What happens if they give you a bunch of stuff like, oh, well, I just want to paint, or I just want to do this. I don't like doing this. Okay, so what are you going to do, smart guy, if somebody tells you that? Or some customer says, well, I don't want to fill out the contact form. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to either follow the process, or you're going to abandon the process. Okay? Or you're going to change the process. Your thoughts, Amari?
Yeah, I think like when you change the process, it's important to, have that moment where you just kind of review the tape of, okay, well, what happened this past week, or what happened with that situation, and really fine tune the process if needed, to include these things that just come up. You can sit there and come up with a plan, come up with a process, but things are just always going to come out of left field that you don't expect, that, helps you to refine that process. So really taking that time to implement that in that moment and reflect on your mistakes and learn from it is key.
Yeah, let's put a real life example in this. We're doing hiring now. Springtime, we're doing hiring, looking for a couple retirees. We're looking for, college, maybe college, summer help, whatever. We've had some experiences where you're working with me, Amari. We're doing an interview. We hire a guy. This happened last year. It also happened the year before. And all of a sudden, the guy's been hired. He's coming in. He's giving you a hard time, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So we're thinking to ourselves, well, listen, every now and then this happens. Every now and then we hire somebody, we do a background check. They interview well. Man, they're kissing my ring. It's all good. And then they treat Amari like shit. Okay. Now what we do when we do our sort of orientation, I now say, or you say, do not give me any shit. Right?
Yeah.
We're literally telling him that now. Okay, folks, how does that happen? It happens because you're learning and adjusting from experience, right? Or if a customer calls and they want that estimate today. No, I don't want to I don't want to wait, or I don't want to fill out a form. I don't want to ask any questions. So maybe 10, 20 years ago, I would have gone out and done that. Well, okay, well, let me go out there anyways. I'll do an estimate. And 99% of the time, the person turns out to be a dick, right? Well, guess what? Now our new process includes. We ask them questions and they start giving us a hard time. No, we're not doing it. That's what I'm talking about as the process evolves. Your thoughts, Brook?
Yeah, I mean, it's always evolving. It's always evolving based on what we're going through on a day to day. And, Amari, I wouldn't beat yourself up over like a process for like a dumpster thing. I mean, sometimes I think that people will ask us stuff, what's your process? Because they don't want to have to do it. And,
they want you to do that.
They want you to do it. And, So I think it's, we can't predict everything, but as long as we have the fundamentals down, estimates, entering in our payroll, our jobs, our properties. I mean, there's going to be things that we just don't know about. And hey, we know now we got to have a process for our dumpster.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And for me, like my point with even bringing that up is, that's a perfect example because it's those moments are when you have a process in place, those moments are great opportunities to manage someone, and to put the ball back in their court, and say, okay, well, what should we do? Or it's like we have the handbook and it's like someone wants to come up to us and ask us about pay, about benefits, about time off, about this and that. And it's like, this is all in your handbook. So you have, it just empowers, I think, the managers to be able to give the problem or the question back to the person for them to have to do some thinking or them to have to do some reading or for them to have to come up with a solution instead of, there's just nothing there established at all.
One of the things that a great company does, a great organization, you see this with, which was shocking about the Patriots. The Patriots, they never developed any other head coaches. Maybe Mike Vrabel was a good coach. I don't even know if he was an assistant coach within the Patriot organization. They didn't develop anything. What we want to have as a company is we want people to be developed to their fullest possible capabilities. Now, let's face it. There's some people, you know what? I just want to check. I don't want to be a foreman. I don't like managing people. God knows I don't want to be an owner. I don't want to deal with that kind of stress. Not everybody's the Indian chief. Okay, you need warriors. You need, people working back office. Stuff like that. I get it, but you want everybody to be always striving to grow into their job, however big or small that job is. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people, they want to get paid more money because, hey, I've been with the company for a couple of years, but they don't want to do anything to grow. And you don't pay people simply because they've been here a long time. You're always challenging somebody, like for the dumpster. Hey, do you know that maybe Amari's busy now? Does he really want to hear this now, this question? And can you solve this problem on your own? And you got to challenge people to think that way. Because, folks, I'm going to end on this note because we'll pick this up, in the next week or two on our process, real life stories. But look at managing people, managing customers, clients, is always about listening, having some empathy, and it's teaching. It's not about yelling. It's not about cracking the whip. It's about listening, but making sure that everything that you say to them is going to make them a little better than before you had this conversation. I'll go around the horn and we'll do final thoughts. Go ahead, Brook, and we'll turn to Amari.
Yeah, no, I think those are all great final thoughts. It's this has been a great podcast and very it's been on my mind just with the tasks that I've been doing the past couple of weeks.
Okay, Amari, final thought.
Yeah, no, I agree with Brooke. It's something that, like we've been saying, it seems like something you can just push off while you put out fires that come by every day, but you really need to prioritize priorities and the process to help deal with the future fires that will come.
Good. Well, at the end of this podcast, folks, Amari will do the final wrap up. He's going to give you an email address that you can send your questions to. I'd love to get some questions here. I don't want to get any random attacks like, hey, you guys don't know shit, but give me some real life examples And we're going to have later in May mailbag. All right, Amari?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll end on this note. All right, everybody, thanks for your time. We'll be talking later.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to the Small Business Confidential. To support, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also add our podcast to your favorite streaming services. Everything is appreciated, and we'll be back soon with another episode and upload schedule. The person voicing the intro's name is Travis Riley. Thank you, Travis. And the music was done by our engineer, me, Amari.